A quiet truth follows many empaths through life, and most people never notice it. The people who care the most often suffer the most. The people who understand others deeply are often the ones struggling to understand why life keeps testing them. While others seem to move through life with clear direction, many empaths spend years feeling lost, overwhelmed, and emotionally exhausted. They carry burdens that do not belong to them. They absorb pain they never created. They give chances when they should walk away. And for a long time, it can feel as though life is punishing them for being kind. Yet hidden beneath struggle is a reality that few people talk about. The hardships empaths face are often connected to the very purpose they are meant to discover. The heartbreaks, the betrayals, the disappointments, and the moments that nearly break them are not always random events. In many cases, they become the lessons that shape who they are meant to become. Most people believe purpose arrives as a clear calling. They expect clarity, confidence, and certainty. But for many empaths, purpose arrives through a very different path. It comes through challenges. It comes through loss. It comes through painful experiences that force them to grow in ways they never expected. Before they discover their strength, they often experience weakness. Before they discover their worth, they often endure rejection. Before they understand their gift, they often see it as a curse. This creates a question that deserves a deeper answer. Why does life seem harder for empaths? Why do so many of them feel as though they are constantly walking through emotional storms while others appear untouched? And why do countless empaths only begin to understand their purpose after surviving some of the darkest chapters of their lives? In this video, we are going to explore the hidden journey many empaths experience. You will learn why empathy is far more than simply being emotional. You will discover how deep sensitivity affects the way empaths experience relationships, challenges, and personal growth. We will uncover why empaths often attract difficult lessons, why emotional pain becomes one of their greatest teachers, and why the struggles they face may be preparing them for a purpose larger than they realize. We will also reveal a powerful truth that many people overlook. The very experiences that once made an empath feel broken can eventually become the source of their greatest strength. As this journey unfolds, each piece of the puzzle will begin to connect. And by the end of this video, you may see empathy, suffering, and purpose from an entirely different perspective. Some of the most important insights are waiting near the end, where we will uncover why many empaths discover that the path they spent years resisting was actually leading them toward their purpose all along. So stay with us until the very end. If you have ever felt different, misunderstood, or burdened by the depth of your emotions, this message may explain more than you expect. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy content that explores human behavior, emotional intelligence, personal growth, and the hidden psychology behind life's biggest challenges, make sure to subscribe and join our community. Now let's begin. For many empaths, the journey does not begin with understanding. It begins with confusion. Long before they learn the value of their sensitivity, they experience the weight of it. As children, many empaths sense things that other people seem to miss completely. They walk into a room and immediately feel tension, even when nobody says a word. They notice changes in tone, facial expressions, and energy that others ignore. They can often tell when someone is hurt, angry, worried, or sad before that person admits it. At first, this may seem like a gift, but without understanding what is happening, it often feels more like a burden. A child who constantly absorbs emotions from the people around them may grow up believing there is something wrong with them. They may wonder why crowded places feel exhausting. They may question why they become overwhelmed by conflict while others move on easily. They may feel emotions so deeply that they struggle to separate their own feelings from the feelings of everyone around them. This heightened sensitivity creates challenges that many people never see. While others are focused on what is happening on the surface, empaths are often reacting to what is happening underneath. They pick up on hidden frustrations, silent disappointments, and unspoken fears. Because of this, they often become emotional caretakers at a very young age. They learn to monitor the moods of parents, friends, and family members. They become experts at keeping the peace. They learn how to make others comfortable. They learn how to anticipate emotional needs before those needs are even expressed. What begins as sensitivity slowly turns into responsibility. And over time, many empaths start carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry. The difficult part is that most people do not understand this experience. Friends may tell them they are too sensitive. Family members may encourage them to toughen up. Society often rewards emotional detachment while treating deep sensitivity as weakness. As a result, many empaths spend years hiding important parts of themselves. They suppress their feelings. They ignore their intuition. They pretend not to care as much as they actually do. But hiding sensitivity does not make it disappear. It simply creates a growing sense of isolation. They begin feeling different from everyone around them. They wonder why life seems more intense for them than it does for others. They may even start believing that their empathy is the reason they struggle. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings many empaths face. The qualities that eventually become their greatest strengths often appear to be weaknesses in the beginning. Their ability to understand others feels like emotional exhaustion. Their compassion feels like vulnerability. Their intuition feels like overthinking. Their sensitivity feels like a flaw. Yet what they do not realize is that these same qualities are quietly preparing them for lessons that will shape the rest of their lives. As empaths move through adolescence and adulthood, another pattern often begins to appear. Because they naturally focus on the emotions and needs of others, they develop a habit of seeing potential where others see problems. They look beyond mistakes. They look beyond unhealthy behavior. They look beyond emotional walls. When most people walk away from someone difficult, the empath often stays. They notice the pain behind the behavior. They see the wounded child behind the angry adult. They see possibilities that others overlook. This ability to recognize potential is beautiful, but it can also become dangerous when it is not balanced with wisdom. Many empaths develop a belief that love means understanding everyone. They believe compassion means endless patience. They believe kindness means always giving another chance. Because of this, they often find themselves trapped in one-sided relationships. They give more than they receive. They listen more than they are heard. They support more than they are supported. Their generosity becomes automatic. Their willingness to help becomes expected. Their desire to heal others becomes part of their identity. Over time, this creates a painful cycle. The empath continues giving because helping others feels natural. Yet the people around them may become comfortable taking without giving back. Some individuals intentionally take advantage of this kindness. Others do so without even realizing it. Either way, the result is often the same. The empath slowly becomes drained. They invest enormous emotional energy into relationships that offer very little in return. They spend years trying to fix situations they did not create. They take responsibility for problems that belong to other people. One of the reasons this happens is because boundaries do not always come naturally to empaths. Their focus on understanding others sometimes prevents them from protecting themselves. When someone behaves poorly, the empath often asks why. When someone causes pain, the empath searches for the hidden reason behind the behavior. While this ability to understand others is valuable, it can also lead them to tolerate situations they should leave behind. Compassion begins replacing self-protection. Understanding begins replacing accountability. People-pleasing often becomes another hidden challenge. Many empaths fear disappointing others. They fear conflict. They fear being misunderstood. As a result, they say yes when they want to say no. They ignore their own needs to keep others happy. They sacrifice their own peace to avoid upsetting someone else. At first, this seems harmless, but over the years, the cost becomes enormous. Every ignored boundary creates resentment. Every act of self-sacrifice creates exhaustion. Every attempt to save someone else pulls them further away from themselves. The painful lessons that follow are not punishments. They are teachers. Life begins presenting situations that expose unhealthy patterns. The empath encounters relationships that test their limits. They meet people who challenge their generosity. They experience situations that force them to recognize the difference between helping and rescuing. These experiences hurt, but they also reveal important truths. They show the empath where compassion has become self-neglect. They show them where kindness has become self-sacrifice. They show them where love has become attachment. For a while, many empaths resist these lessons. They continue giving. They continue hoping. They continue believing that if they just care enough, things will eventually change. But eventually, a moment arrives that changes everything. It may come after a betrayal they never expected. It may come after years of feeling unappreciated. It may come after giving everything they have to someone who never truly valued it. Whatever form it takes, the result is often the same. They reach a breaking point. The breaking point is rarely dramatic from the outside. In fact, many people never see it happening. The empath continues smiling. They continue helping. They continue functioning. But internally, something begins to crack. The emotional weight becomes too heavy. The exhaustion becomes impossible to ignore. The endless cycle of giving without receiving starts to feel unbearable. They realize they can no longer continue living the same way. This stage often brings intense emotional burnout. Burnout is more than simple tiredness. It is a deep emotional depletion that affects every part of life. Activities that once felt meaningful become draining. Relationships that once felt rewarding become exhausting. The empath feels disconnected from themselves. They may question their identity. They may question their choices. They may even question the value of their empathy altogether. Betrayal often plays a significant role during this period. Many empaths discover that some of the people they trusted the most never valued them the way they hoped. This realization can be devastating, not because the empath expects perfection, but because they invest so much of themselves into the people they love. When that trust is broken, the emotional impact runs deep. Disappointment follows. The belief that kindness always leads to appreciation begins to collapse. The belief that understanding everyone will create healthy relationships begins to fade. Yet within this collapse, a new awareness begins to emerge. The empath starts noticing patterns they previously ignored. They begin recognizing how often they abandoned their own needs. They begin seeing how frequently they ignored warning signs. They begin understanding that constantly saving others did not create healthier relationships. In many cases, it simply delayed necessary change. This awareness can be uncomfortable because it requires honesty. It requires looking inward instead of focusing entirely on others. It requires acknowledging that empathy without boundaries can become self-destruction. For many empaths, this is the first time they truly begin examining themselves. Not their partners, not their friends, not their families, themselves. As these realizations deepen, suffering starts taking on a different role. It stops being an enemy and starts becoming a teacher. Pain has a way of exposing truths that comfort often hides. During difficult periods, distractions lose their power. Surface-level concerns become less important. The empath begins asking questions they may have avoided for years. Who am I beneath my role as a helper? Why do I keep repeating the same patterns? Why am I drawn to certain types of relationships? What am I actually searching for? These questions mark the beginning of self-discovery. Instead of constantly directing attention outward, the empath begins turning inward. They start exploring their own wounds. They start examining old beliefs. They begin understanding how past experiences shaped their behavior. This process is not easy. It requires courage. It requires patience. It requires a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. As healing progresses, emotional maturity starts developing. The empath learns that compassion and boundaries can exist together. They learn that kindness does not require self-sacrifice. They learn that understanding someone does not mean accepting harmful behavior. They begin separating responsibility from empathy. They realize they can care deeply without carrying the weight of everyone else's problems. This shift changes everything. The same sensitivity that once caused confusion now begins creating clarity. The same intuition that once felt overwhelming starts providing guidance. The same empathy that once attracted painful experiences begins helping them recognize healthier relationships. Slowly, they stop viewing their struggles as meaningless suffering. They start seeing them as experiences that shaped their growth. And as these lessons continue unfolding, the empath begins discovering that every hardship carried a hidden message, every disappointment revealed a deeper truth, and every painful chapter was quietly preparing them for a version of themselves they had not yet met. After years of carrying emotional weight that was never theirs to carry, many empaths arrive at a moment that changes everything. It does not always happen suddenly. Sometimes it develops slowly through a series of disappointments. Sometimes it arrives after one final betrayal. Sometimes it comes after years of exhaustion that can no longer be ignored. Whatever the cause, a powerful shift begins to take place. The empath who once felt responsible for everyone else's happiness starts asking a different question. What about my happiness? The empath who spent years fixing other people's problems begins wondering why they have ignored their own needs for so long. For the first time, their attention starts moving inward instead of outward. This is often one of the most difficult transitions an empath will ever experience. For years, helping others may have felt like their purpose. Being needed may have felt like proof of their value. Solving problems may have felt like love. Sacrificing their own needs may have felt noble. But eventually, they begin to see a painful truth. Much of their identity was built around being useful to other people. Their worth became connected to how much they could give. Their value became connected to how much they could endure. Their importance became connected to how much they could rescue. The problem with this mindset is that it creates an endless cycle. No matter how much they give, it never feels like enough. No matter how many people they help, there is always someone else who needs saving. No matter how hard they try, they cannot heal wounds that belong to other people. This realization becomes one of the most important lessons of their entire journey. They begin understanding that they are not responsible for carrying everyone else's life. At first, this awareness feels uncomfortable. Saying no feels selfish. Creating distance feels cruel. Prioritizing themselves feels wrong. Yet the more they practice these changes, the more they realize something surprising. Healthy boundaries do not make them less compassionate. They make their compassion stronger. Instead of giving from exhaustion, they begin giving from strength. Instead of helping because they fear rejection, they help because they genuinely choose to. Instead of sacrificing themselves to earn love, they start recognizing that love should not require self-destruction. This is where self-respect begins to grow. For many empaths, self-respect is not something they naturally learned early in life. They learned how to respect others. They learned how to understand others. They learned how to support others. But learning how to respect themselves often takes much longer. It requires recognizing their own needs as important. It requires acknowledging their own feelings as valid. It requires understanding that protecting their peace is not selfish. It is necessary. As self-respect grows, another transformation takes place. The need for validation begins to fade. Many empaths spend years seeking approval without even realizing it. They want to be seen as kind. They want to be appreciated. They want their efforts to matter. They want proof that their sacrifices were worthwhile. But external validation is fragile. It depends on other people. It depends on circumstances they cannot control. Eventually, they discover that real confidence comes from somewhere deeper. It comes from knowing who they are regardless of who approves of them. This newfound confidence changes the way they move through the world. They stop chasing people who constantly pull away. They stop trying to convince others to value them. They stop proving their worth through endless acts of service. Instead, they begin showing up as their authentic selves. They stop shrinking to make others comfortable. They stop pretending to be less sensitive than they are. They stop hiding their intuition. They stop apologizing for caring deeply. Authenticity becomes one of the greatest sources of freedom they have ever experienced. For years, they may have worn masks to fit into different environments. They adapted to the expectations of family, friends, partners, and society. But the more authentic they become, the less energy they waste trying to be someone they are not. This creates a sense of peace that many empaths spend years searching for. What makes this stage so important is that it marks the beginning of true purpose. Before this transformation, much of their energy was spent reacting to life. They were constantly solving problems, managing emotions, and putting out fires. But once boundary, self-respect, and authenticity take root, their energy becomes available for something greater. They begin asking not what others need from them, but what they are meant to contribute to the world. They begin discovering passions that were hidden beneath years of emotional survival. They begin noticing talents they never had the chance to develop. Slowly, purpose starts taking shape. And what is fascinating is that purpose rarely arrives in the form they expected. It is not always a career. It is not always a title. It is not always a dramatic calling. Sometimes purpose appears through meaningful connections. Sometimes it appears through teaching, healing, creating, guiding, or inspiring. Sometimes it appears through living authentically enough to give others permission to do the same. The empath begins realizing that purpose is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming fully themselves. As this understanding deepens, They start looking back at their life from a completely different perspective. The experiences that once felt unfair begin revealing hidden value. The wounds they carried for so long start taking on new meaning. They begin recognizing that every struggle taught them something important. Every painful chapter developed qualities that cannot be learned from comfort alone. The empath who experienced rejection understands loneliness in a way few others can. They know what it feels like to stand on the outside looking in. They understand the pain of feeling unseen. Because of this, they often become the people who make others feel welcome. They become the people who notice when someone is struggling. They become the people who create spaces where others feel understood. What once felt like a wound becomes a source of connection. The empath who survived betrayal develops a unique understanding of trust. They know how devastating broken trust can be. They know how difficult it is to open your heart after being hurt. They know the fear that follows disappointment. Because of this, they often become more thoughtful in the way they treat others. They understand the value of honesty. They understand the importance of integrity. Their pain teaches them lessons that shape the way they build relationships. The empath who endured emotional hardship develops a deep understanding of healing. They know recovery is not linear. They know growth is messy. They know some wounds take years to fully heal. Because they have walked through darkness themselves, they become capable of guiding others through difficult seasons. Not because they have all the answers, but because they understand the journey. This is one of the most remarkable transformations an empath experiences. Their greatest wounds become their greatest tools. The experiences that once made them feel broken become the very things that allow them to help others. The pain they wished had never happened becomes a source of wisdom. The struggles they once resented become evidence of their strength. What makes this transformation powerful is that it creates genuine empathy rather than surface-level sympathy. They do not simply understand pain intellectually. They understand it personally. They know what it feels like to lose hope. They know what it feels like to question themselves. They know what it feels like to rebuild after disappointment. This gives their words weight. It gives their presence meaning. It allows them to connect with people on a level that cannot be taught in a classroom. As their understanding continues to deepen, another realization begins to emerge. For most of their life, they believed purpose was waiting somewhere in the future. They believed there would eventually be a moment when everything finally made sense. They imagined purpose as a destination, a place to arrive after enough growth, enough healing, or enough success. But slowly, they discover something far more profound. Purpose was never waiting at the end of the journey. It was being created throughout the journey itself. Every challenge was shaping them. Every disappointment was teaching them. Every heartbreak was refining them. Every setback was developing qualities they would eventually need. The difficult path was not a delay. It was not a mistake. It was not evidence that they were moving in the wrong direction. It was the very process that was preparing them for who they were becoming. When they look back, patterns begin to appear. The lessons connect. The experiences make sense. The hardships that once seemed random reveal hidden purpose. They begin seeing how every chapter contributed to their growth. The moments that tested them developed resilience. The moments that hurt them developed compassion. The moments that challenged them developed wisdom. Even the periods of uncertainty served a purpose. They taught patience. They taught faith. They taught perseverance. They taught the empath how to keep moving forward without having all the answers. These lessons become part of their foundation. Without them, they would not be the same person. Many empaths spend years wishing they could erase certain experiences from their past. They wish they could avoid the heartbreak. They wish they could avoid the disappointment. They wish they could avoid the pain. But eventually they begin understanding that removing those experiences would also remove the growth that came from them. It would remove the strength they developed. It would remove the wisdom they earned. It would remove the deeper understanding that now guides their life. The truth they eventually discover is both simple and powerful. The fire was never there to destroy them. The fire was shaping them. Every challenge was developing qualities they could not have gained any other way. Every difficult season was preparing them for a greater level of understanding. Every painful lesson was helping transform empathy into wisdom. And it is within that transformation that the deepest parts of their purpose finally begin to reveal themselves. Many empaths spend years wondering why life feels heavier for them, why they feel things so deeply, why they seem to carry emotional weight that other people never even notice. There are moments when they question themselves, moments when they wish they could care less, feel less, and give less. Moments when their sensitivity feels more like a burden than a gift. But as time passes, many of them begin to see a truth that was hidden beneath every challenge they faced. The pain was never there to destroy them. The pain was there to transform them. Every heartbreak taught them something about love. Every betrayal taught them something about trust. Every disappointment taught them something about boundaries. Every loss taught them something about strength. And every difficult season pushed them closer to understanding who they truly are. Because purpose is rarely discovered during the easiest chapters of life. It is often revealed during the moments that test us the most, the moments that force us to grow, the moments that force us to let go, the moments that force us to become someone stronger, wiser, and more aware than we were before. What once looked like a curse becomes a gift. What once looked like a setback becomes preparation. What once looked like suffering becomes the very thing that awakens purpose. That is why so many empaths eventually realize that their journey was never about avoiding pain. It was about learning how to turn pain into wisdom, how to turn wounds into strength, and how to turn compassion into a force that changes lives, including their own. So if you are walking through a difficult season right now, do not underestimate what this chapter may be teaching you. The struggle you are facing today may be preparing you for a purpose you cannot yet see. The answers may not be clear yet, the reason may not make sense yet, but your story is still being written. And some of the most meaningful chapters often come after the hardest ones. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to let us know by hitting the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more insights